Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to cut through all the noise, and I mean years of it, to get straight to the science of COVID-19.
Okay, so let's just dive right in, shall we? We're going to break down the virus itself, what it actually does to the body, and then look at the hard data behind the main countermeasure. The goal here, it's pretty simple, really. Just clarity.
All right, first up, let's get to know the virus that kicked this whole thing off, SARS-CoV-2.
So, what is COVID-19? Well, at its most basic, it's the illness you get from the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. It was first spotted back in late 2019, and, well, its lightning-fast spread across the globe pretty much redefined the word pandemic for, a whole generation.
So how does this thing actually get around? Well, the main way it moves from person to person is through the air. It's kind of simple, really. When someone who's infected breathes or talks or coughs, they're releasing these tiny little infectious particles. And inhaling those particles, that's the biggest risk, especially when you're indoors in a place where the air isn't moving around much. Now, it's less common, but yeah, touching a surface that has the virus on it and then touching your face, that's another way it can happen.
The wild thing is, getting COVID-19 can be a completely different experience for different people. I mean, the list has all the usual suspects, right? Fever, cough. But it was that really strange, sudden loss of taste or smell that became such a unique sign of this virus, especially in the beginning.
Okay, so what actually happens on a biological level when the virus slips past our defenses? Let's take a look inside the body and see.
Right, so once you're exposed, you don't just get sick instantly. There's this delay. They call it the incubation period. And on average, it takes about 4 or 5 days for symptoms to show up. But that window can be pretty wide. It can stretch all the way out to 12 days before pretty much everyone who's going to get sick starts feeling it. But what about for folks who actually get sick enough to notice symptoms? What does that look like? Well, the data is pretty clear on this. The vast majority of people, we're talking about 81%, have a mild to moderate case. Then you've got a smaller group that gets hit harder with severe symptoms. They end up in the hospital. And then a tiny fraction of those, just about 5%, become critically ill. And here's where things get really fascinating and honestly pretty dangerous. In the absolute worst cases, it's not always the virus itself that's causing the most harm. It's actually the body's own immune system freaking out and going into overdrive. It's called a cytokine storm, and it's basically this huge, out-of-control inflammatory reaction that can end up damaging your own critical organs, like your lungs, your heart, and your kidneys. It's the body attacking itself. So, managing that intense immune reaction, that became the #1 goal for public health officials. And that brings us, of course, to the main tool that was developed to do just that, vaccines. So, immunity. That's always been a huge question, right? And yeah, getting sick does give you some natural protection. But the studies show that protection can start to wear off in just 3 to 6 months. The vaccines, on the other hand, are designed to do something different. They're built to create a stronger, longer-lasting immune memory. Think of it as a more reliable, durable shield. Let's talk about the mRNA vaccines, because they were a genuine game changer in this whole pandemic. But how does this revolutionary tech actually work? How does it get our bodies ready for a fight? Okay, the best way to think about it is like a training manual for your immune system. The vaccine gives your cells a set of instructions. That's the M, the messenger part of mRNA. And these instructions tell your cells to build just one harmless little piece of the virus, the spike protein. So your cells build it, your immune system spots it, and goes, "Hey, what's this?" and immediately starts building an army of antibodies and memory cells to fight it. Then the instructions just disappear. They dissolve. And just like that, your body is trained and ready for the real thing. Now, whenever you have new technology like this, questions and, let's be honest, myths are going to pop up. So let's just tackle a couple of the biggest ones head on. Okay, this is a big one, right? The idea that the technology is just too new to be safe. I mean, the speed that these vaccines were developed was incredible, and it made a lot of people ask, wait a minute, did they cut corners? Well, here's the thing. This overnight success was really decades in the making. The vaccine itself was new, sure, but the technology behind it, the mRNA platform, wasn't new at all. Scientists have been working on it since the 1990s. And here's the crucial part. All that previous research on other coronaviruses, like SARS and MERS, gave them a huge head start. They were absolutely not starting from square one.
All right, next myth. Getting the COVID vaccine can actually give you COVID. This was another one you heard all the time. So let's be super clear about this. This is a simple biological fact. It is medically impossible. You cannot get COVID-19 from the vaccine. And why is that? Because, like we just talked about, the vaccine doesn't have any of the actual virus in it. Not live, not dead, not a single piece. It only has the instructions to build that one tiny, harmless protein. That's it.
Okay, so we've talked about what the vaccines don't do. Let's look at the data on what they do. Take a look at this number, 91.6%. That's the efficacy rate from the Sputnik V vaccine trials just 21 days after the first dose. And we saw these kinds of incredibly high numbers, often over 90%, across different vaccines and preventing people from getting sick with symptoms. This wasn't a one-off, it was a pattern. And look, this wasn't just happening in carefully controlled lab trials. This chart shows a real-world study of more than 23,000 healthcare workers. And the trend is just crystal clear. When you saw this kind of dramatic drop in a high-risk group like that, it was a massive sign that what we saw in the lab was actually working out here in the real world. I mean, look at that fully vaccinated number. The infection rate plummets to just a tiny fraction of a percent.
Now, something that's absolutely vital to get is that the risk from the virus itself is not the same for everyone. It's not one size fits all. This table shows what's called the infection fatality rate, or IFR, and you can see it plain as day. The risk of dying from an infection is incredibly low when you're young, but it just climbs and climbs dramatically as you get older. And check this out. It's also consistently higher for men than for women, right across the board.
So, at the end of the day, when you step back and look at all the pieces, the virus, the body's response, the vaccine data, the scientific takeaway is really clear. The main job of the vaccine is to be a trainer for your immune system, getting it ready so it can prevent the really bad stuff, severe illness, hospitalization, and death.
And that really brings us to the final big picture thought here. You know, the whole challenge of COVID-19 wasn't just about a virus. It was also about information, a flood of it. And in a world where we're just bombarded with information, learning how to tell the good stuff from the noise, how to really understand the scientific process, well, that's never been more important than it is right now.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.